Hello, it's me again, Terence South, back to talk to you about line of duty and my time within British Special Forces. As I spoke before, I spent a certain amount of time with the Parachute Regiment as an engineer, off to college, then again to join the Royal Marines as an engineer attached to them. So the Royal Marines are very much soldiers of the sea, specialising in landing craft, etc. Whereas the paratroopers are very different. So I've got two special forces, they're very, very different in the way they go about their work. The Parachute Regiment is very lean. They are very much behind enemy lines, they live with what they've got round their waist. They live with what they can carry. You can't carry it, you can't eat it. There's two things you've got to be able to do whether you work as a paratrooper. You've got to be able to eat it or fire it. That's it, that's all you carry. No luxuries whatsoever. You remain as light as possible and with as much firepower as possible. And that's why the British Special Forces, you see them, but you wouldn't notice them in the street. They're not all big muscle-bound guys. Some of them are quite lean, quite small. But that means that body is efficient. They don't need these big protein drinks. And then, so you've got these paratroopers, lean, mean guys, and then you've got the Royal Marines. They're very much guys who live at sea and assault on land. But the Royal Navy have a huge supply chain, they have a huge backup to actually get them where they're going to go. It's very different from the paratroopers who are put in and then they parachute in your goods, your food, your ammunition, your resources is very lean. The Royal Marines there, we have the whole of the Royal Navy to support you. So that's the two. I've been in both environments and they are very different to operate. They're also very different people. So, and they have their own languages among themselves. So, the different cultures. So anyway, if I go back to where I finished on my last session, there was me, finished my commando course, an ex-paratrooper. And next to me was a guy I hardly knew. And I found out this is potentially my next commanding officer. And believe it or not, he used to be a paratrooper as well. Wow. So, I goes to my squadron and I didn't get put where I wanted to go. There's me wanting to go in a field troop. No, I was to go to HQ. That really annoyed me. Couldn't do anything about it. Just get your head down, get on with it. Something will break. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't get annoyed, don't get upset with people. You're not going to achieve nothing. So there I am working away and we're going to Northern Ireland. So I no sooner landed in the squadron, didn't know anyone, and I was sent to Northern Ireland to work. And so I was in the city of Belfast, and then that means big high-rise blocks, patrolling streets. From there, I went down into Forkhill, Crossmaglen on the borders, the big open country. So it was different kind of soldiering. We were building a huge police station in view of our enemy who were across the other side of the Irish border. Well, that's politics. And so really, as the British Army, you then start an interest in politics because it affects where you go and what you do. You should always understand who you're fighting for and what they want to achieve. Now, we finished Northern Ireland, we were really lucky, we lost nobody. Nobody got hurt. We all went, we all came back. But that was very much one, luck. Sometimes you just need luck. And, you know, it's hard to explain. You know, just coming back, you were lucky, you were in a good team. Did you deter anybody by people watching you and going to take you on saying that's a good team, we don't want to mess with them? So we finished Northern Ireland, I came home. We had a few months, I went to Norway. Out to Norway, it's minus 20, minus 30, minus 40. Wow, that is cold. Never experienced anything like it in my life. Freezing temperatures. You know, there's nothing like it. Sometimes needing to keep vehicles running all night because they will freeze. never ever getting a new vehicle because the engine was so tight it wouldn't start in a cold weather. And so there we are working, we learn how to ski. We learn how to exist in a snow hole. You then again become part of a team. For a snow hole team to be successful, everybody's got to be strong. Everybody's got to pull their weight. That's why this physical ability as a soldier, you've got to keep it there. You've got to stay fit. Otherwise you go down with hypothermia or whatever. But being fit allows you to change direction and do things. And now I apply that to business that I own. Stay very light and make yourself able to move. Don't have lots of baggage. Don't tie yourself down to one path. Always be able to up sticks and change direction in life. So the last time we spoke, we were in Northern Ireland. And when you look at it, the British Empire, how it had been managed, people tried to do the same thing again in Northern Ireland. And so it didn't work. It didn't work at all. Very much colonialism. The army had been based on it. Senior people in the army had actually thought, we'll do this in Northern Ireland, and it didn't work. You can't use the same sort of methods as you'd used elsewhere in the world. And so we had lots of problems coming together. We had the Catholics, we had the Protestants, we had an unequal living standards, quality of work. Everything was different between, just simply because of religion, which was an absolute disgrace. And then you had people in various political parties favouring one side and not the other. So it wasn't balanced, and it wasn't a good scenario to go into when you're trying to get a decision and people are telling each other lies. So it's really difficult to understand what went on in the background, but you will find that although we have the peace agreement now, the peace agreement is not really fair in that British soldiers can still be prosecuted, but people who are in the military, the IRA and other groups can't. So that is difficult for British soldiers to accept. But there's no progress without compromise, and that's life. Sometimes you've just got to, okay, as long as it doesn't go too far. So Northern Ireland was a difficult one. There was no political answer, no political shutdown of the situation without somebody giving something massive. And the British government and the British military men took a huge hit to actually secure that peace agreement up until this day today. But anyway, we move out Northern Ireland. We've been to Norway. We've settled down in our new squadron down there in Plymouth. And life's good. I'm promoted, moving on. Things are going really well. And then this guy who sat next to me, who's now my commanding officer, Roderick MacDonald, got on well with the guy. One day, all of a sudden, my boss man tells me, Sid, my staff sergeant, commanding officer wants to see you, Terence. What? Why? Oh, is my mum dead? Is my dad dead? What's wrong? That's the only reason you go to him. He calls you in the office, has a nice little chat with you, and you get a ticket and you go home to sort things out. And I was just wheeled in. Sit down. Wow, what's going on? What happens? Cornwall South. We're going to war on Monday. What? Right, you and I need a little chat. I'm going to sack my driver and you're going to be my bodyguard. What? We're going to, let's get this right, sir. We're going to war on Monday and I'm going to be your bodyguard. Yes, that's right. And what I want you to do is, and he had a list, bush, 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 bush. Right. I want you to do all this and you can go home for the weekend. What? Right, I want all this done You can go home, just go home yourself, come back. Don't tell anybody what's happening. There's only you knows. You know before some of the senior staff, because I believe I can trust you. Wow, what a thing for a command officer to say to somebody as low as a corporal. But we've been on the same commando course with pleasantries, just walking down the yard, around the officers. Hello, sir. Hello, South. But that guy trusted me. It was amazing how much trust had been built. And so I had to go back to my sergeant. I was like, what's happening? I don't work for you anymore, Sid. What? Sergeant, I don't work for you anymore. I work for the boss. Oh, right. What do you do for him? I don't know. He just gives a list of jobs and I've got to go. So I'll see you next week. And I went out. I got all the jobs done he wanted done. I kept my mouth shut. I jumped in my car. I went home for the weekend. Now, when you go home for the weekend and you go to war on the Monday, what do? You might never come back. You've got a mum and dad. So anyway, we'll leave that for the next session. I'd like to thank you. Well, Terence South here again, nice to be back. You left me at home last time we spoke, and I'm going to war on the Monday, and I arrive home at the Friday night, 11 o'clock, and I can't tell anybody. What do? What do you do? Do you cry? Do you kiss your mother? Well, your head. It took me 10 hours to drive home. My head's doing this. What do I do? Do I leave my car there? If I leave my car at home, that means my mum doesn't have to come to get it if I die. She can just sell it. She doesn't have to go to the camp to where all the other wives and mothers to pick cars up and things up that belong to their sons. And your head is just scrambled. But remember, you stay physically fit. Just keep your eye on, this is what I've got to do. Don't let things get complicated. Just do what needs to be done. So there I'm home. I goes and buys a watch. My mother's like, what are you buying a watch for? What you bought a Casio watch for? You've got a Rolex. You got Rolex for your 21st birthday. You bought it for yourself. You bought it with a credit card. Why have you bought a Casio? I was leaving my Rolex at home. I was not taking my Rolex to war. Put it in the box, put it in the bedside cabinet, put my Casio on, and that was where I was going to go with. I then bought some clothes. I actually went out and spent a lot of money on my credit card, to be honest, because if I died, then it just got paid off by the insurance company. So I went out and spent some money, bought myself some nice clothes, and I finished with my girlfriend. And people couldn't believe it. And I was like, yeah. I finished with my girlfriend. Why? I didn't want anybody, should I die, something happening over my coffin. She hardly knew my mother. She didn't know my dad. She didn't know my brother. It was like everybody would say, who's this woman crying here? Who's she? She's only known my son for a year. We've known him 21. You know, so it was like, buff, girlfriend, gone. I went round to two friends and apologised, said a few things. Look, I've come to make up. I'm really sorry for what I said. But I went away, everything was cleared. So if I didn't come back, there's nobody could say a bad thing about me. I'd apologised to those where I'd been wrong, and other people had said, well, yeah, I think more of you for doing that, and it was a big leveller, but I didn't want any ill feeling anywhere. And when I overran my time, I didn't get the train. I said, right, I'll have to get the car. The car's got to go. So in the car, I drove 10 hours back to camp. I was there for the Monday morning, into the boss man's office. And then that was a really, really difficult time. So there's me. This is just preparing for war. That's not, we haven't even got there. And what do you do? So anyway, time goes on. Everybody gets broke on the news on the Monday morning at parade. I've already known for 3 or 4 days. Right, I'm ahead of the ball here. Corporal South, I want you to do this, this and this. I want you to get a car. I want you to... And the commanding officer, his children were in school in Manchester, I remember. And he says, yeah, I'm going to give a presentation at the Manchester school where my children go. And I'm going to do this and go that. And I want you to drive me up there and we're going up this afternoon. And it was like, wow. right, we're off. So I drove to Manchester, drove back, thought nothing of it. But you know that guy, commanding officer or not, he was driving all the way to Manchester to a private school where his children were in boarding school, giving a presentation about the army, and he was actually saying goodbye to his children. All undercover. And it was really, now in later life you think about it, you think, wow, I never seen that at the time, as you reflect on things. So anyway, obviously there's some guys whose wives wouldn't let them go. We were supposed to be leaving on the Friday, for instance, and we had to go down as the muscle squad and, come on, you come with us. She'll not let us go, we're fighting. Oh. So, in the Land Rovers, the squadron was together and off we went. And I actually went, as we call it, south, and boarded HMS Fearless. And this was one of my real lessons in life, this. And what a place. So HMS Fearless was the command ship. Whole of the land forces were going to be commanded from here. Brigadier Julian Thompson, all the top guys were on there. And there's me, the guy that looked after Rod MacDonald. So anyway, goes to Falklands, stops off at Ascension Island, and I nearly died there through a silly accident. Nearly drowned in a vehicle that just couldn't swim. But anyway, we get to the Falklands, and there we are. Goes ashore, the firefight starts. The firefight is when you shoot at each other. We got on land, we didn't have much trouble in San Carlos water, and then we started moving out, and that's where the trouble came. Our first real trouble was in San Carlos water. So, here's me signing off till our next meeting on South Asia TV. Thank you.